Who's trying to play park?
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. And you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today we are looking back at Sunday's games, 9 games in total, looking at injuries and also previewing Monday's action in the NBA. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it. Indeed. The first game up was the Miami Heat, snatching one off the Brooklyn Nets, 109-106. Interesting rotational decisions from the Miami Heat in this one. Kelly Olynyk, who'd been playing really well, playing a lot of minutes, only 6 minutes. Weirdly, they went a lot smaller in this game, the Heat, playing more of those guards, pushing Dunk Robinson and Justice Winslow up to power forward a little bit more. Olynyk had been playing quite well, but this is it's quite a strange one to see just that level of drop-off from him. I talked about in the waiver wire show how he'd been playing well, but it is always hard to trust what he's doing. Of course, this is where the lack of trust does come from. With everyone back in the rotation and getting full minutes, it was interesting to see Kendrick Nunn only played 25 minutes, 11 points on 15 shots. He'll be better than that most nights in terms of efficiency. But where he tops out in terms of minutes is the real concern in terms of his fantasy value. I don't think he's going to end the season as a 12-team guy. He probably is a hold. Next big game, I'd try to sell him, but I've been saying that for a while. While Dunk Robinson, 33 minutes, 10 and 10 with 3 triples. He's providing solid enough 3-point stream value, but again, hard to judge where those minutes land on a day-by-day basis. Derrick Jones Jr. was available for this game, but they did go with Robinson over Jones, and Jones only played 10 seconds. The Iron Shoulder Goran Dragic had 24 points on 18 shots, 6 assists. That's sort of the high watermark type situation for him, not something that we should be looking at as an ongoing situation. While Jim Butler had 20 with 7 rebounds. Justice Winslow, only 30 minutes, 10, 5, and 3. Poor shooting. It is, again, hard. Winslow was putting up big numbers when Butler was out to begin the season. That's not the case anymore. I don't think Winslow's a 10-teamer. He probably is a real borderline 12-teamer, but I can see that going away pretty quickly. And Tyler Hero, only 21 minutes. I don't believe he is a 12-team league guy. It's too hard to find touches, shots, and minutes with everyone back for him to put up the sort of value that he's going to need to do to be a must-hold player. Big shout-out to Bam Adebayo as well, 17 and 16 for him. On to the Nets. Spencer Dinwiddie, 29, 6, and 4. I imagine Kyrie is out for at least another week, so Dinwiddie's going to be putting up these strong numbers. He's like a top 20 guy over the last 2 weeks. He will, of course, drop off pretty significantly when Irving returns and then again when LeVert returns. But the numbers at the moment are great. If you can convince someone that he's going to put up these numbers later in the season, then sell him for a top 40, top 50 guy. But don't sell him for a borderline top 100 bloke. Just ride out what you're getting here. We don't know when Irving is going to be back. That might be a month down the track. Like, who knows? But if you can get that more guaranteed upper-level player, that is the move that I would make. Big night from Smoke and Joe Harris as well, 25 points. With 5 triples for Harris here. His numbers have been pretty strong as a high-efficiency 3-point shooter who's providing points. He's not doing much else apart from that, and we never expect him to do too much more apart from that, and he will lose a little bit of usage when those other guys come back. So he is a 12-team guy at the moment. I just have little faith in him sticking at the current level, while the artist formerly known as Torian Prince had 9, 7, and 5, 3 blocks, and a steal, shot horribly. He has been really up and down. We're all well aware of that. He probably is a 12-team league guy, but he may not be the next game, and then he is the next game. That's sort of where he is, and if he's on your roster, he's your 12th or 13th best guy anyway. Jarrett Allen, seeded minutes to DeAndre Jordan. 4 and 12 for Allen. 15 and 8 for Jordan. That's a great performance from Jordan, but most nights he will play fewer minutes than this, and he won't be this productive. I look at Allen as a 12-team league guy and Jordan as more of a 14-teamer. While Garrett Temple, who'd been playing well, couldn't hit a shot, still had 6 rebounds and 5 assists. He's an interesting 14-team league player. Let's go on to the next game here. It was the Boston Celtics and the New York Knicks. The Celtics, Jayson Tatum, this is fantastic. 30 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 5 triples. You can't really ask for much more for Tatum. This is what he would need to do, similarly, probably not to this level, to be that consistent top 20-ish sort of guy. It's great to see him do that. Let's hope it can continue. While Jaylen Brown was also pretty strong. 28 points on 61% shooting. Very little else in terms of the rebounds and assists. He had the steal and the block. He hit some threes. He is still a sell high guy to me, because that usage will come down when Hayward returns. Marcus Smart had to leave this game early with an abdominal injury. So that is a level of concern. He missed all of his shots. He's had abdominal issues in the past. He's still a hold at this point, but if he happens to miss time, you're going to get more minutes for Shemi Ojeleye. That doesn't matter for 12-team leagues. Brad Wanamaker gets a little bit of a boost even into 14-team league territory, and then maybe someone like Tremont Waters or Carson Edwards can get some of those other minutes for very, very deep leagues. The center position continues to be a bit of a mess. 17 minutes for Vanilla Tice, 16 minutes for Enes Kanter, and 7 minutes for the Rock DJ Robbie Williams. If they're all playing under 20 minutes, it's hard to roster any of them outside of deeper formats. A double-double from Kanter, 11 and 11. Tice really struggled. Kanter's been in that 15 to 17 minute range recently. Some games with Tice, some games without. I'm not rushing to add him. While Wanamaker is available in 97% of leagues, he had 11, 2, and 3. He's playing pretty well, and while Hayward is out, he is benefiting, and that makes him a 14, probably 16-team league guy. So a guy that is available in a lot of spots that you can look to add. For the Knicks, of course, Marcus Morris was out, so with the guy that was completely 100% out of the rotation last game, he started. The fort, Kevin Knox came in. He started. He played 22 minutes because Fizdale, 11 and 5 with 2 triples and 2 blocks. Now, I am not a Kevin Knox fan. I don't think he is very good. I also know that the front office and the coach are worse than him in their respective jobs, but the way that they handle Knox is abominable. His defense is abominable. I don't think he's ever going to be a good player, but the constant shuffling back and forward of roles, of minutes, of DNPs is nonsense. Marcus Morris did sit this one out with back spasms. I've been saying to sell high on Marcus Morris all season. At some point, shit is going to hit the fan and his numbers aren't going to look anywhere near as good. We also had Frankie Ntilikina last just 7 minutes in this one due to a back issue. That meant that Dennis Smith Jr. played 38. He had 17 points, 7 assists, 2 blocks. If this is what it takes for him to get minutes, then I'm not sure what to make of that. But both Payton and Ntilikina are out, so Smith got those minutes. He's available in 95% of leagues, so if we have Frank and Alfred out for the next couple, there is some short-term stream value, while out of nowhere, Damo Dotson played 32 minutes. Of course, just worth mentioning, Alonzo Tria, a DMP CD. 10 points for Dotson, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and a block. Really strong night from him, but under 10% usage for one of the better shooters on the team is curious. Julius Randle span his way through to 26 points in 34 minutes. No defensive numbers, but at least he hit the free throws at a passable rate, 77%. Mitchie Robinson, it was yuck.
Mitch Robinson says, I'll take it from here.
He had 2 games in a row where he was at 30 minutes. This one here, he didn't crack 20. He only had 6 and 5. He didn't block a shot and he fouled out. It's a continual frustration. It's going to continually be frustrating. I am still holding because I do believe in him, but I'm also stubborn and I'm relatively patient in terms of the value of these guys. I understand if you want to drop him, I would not be doing it. The last 2 games where he played 30 minutes was interesting. They weren't great games, but the minutes were there, and this is obviously frustrating. While RJ Barrett continues to piss all over your percentages, 31 from the field and 62 from the line, while having 16 and 7. No assist is also pretty rough when we're looking at what Barrett brings to your team. He is still a hold, I believe, Barrett, despite the frustration of this sort of a performance. Next game up, the Memphis Grizzlies and the Minnesota Timberwolves. We had no Ja Morant, who's out with those back spasms. He is week to week. That is a tough blow. Tyus Jones stepped up against his former team. Only played 25 minutes, Tyus, but 12, 4, and 7, and a 1-1. That's a 12-team league guy. So for the short term, he is a guy to add. We got to actually consider DeAnthony Melton as well, who played 23 minutes, 9, 7, and 8, 2 steals and a block. This is a bloke who racks up steals at a really high rate, a great blocker for a guard, rebounds pretty strongly. We saw that in Phoenix last year. He is rostered in allegedly 0% of Yahoo leagues, so any 20s, 18s, and 16 teamers, he has value. And if he plays 23 minutes a night, even 14-team leagues need to pay attention. Dylan Brooks, he saw his usage spike. He scored 26 points, 3 assists, no defensive numbers. He is wildly inconsistent, we know that, but this Morant injury might at least help for the usage to stay relatively stable, and that might give him some back-end 12-team league value. While with Jonas Valanciunas out, Kyle Anderson out, and Brandon Clark succumbing to a hip issue 10 minutes in, we saw Bruno Caboclo play 29 minutes. He had 12 and 13 with 3 steals. That's great. Bruno puts up the numbers, but it did take quite a few situations to roll his way for him to get these minutes. Of course, if Mitchell Robinson fouls out, we also have to check to see what Jaren Jackson Jr. did, and he went one better and fouled out in 19 minutes and 17 seconds. I think that's 14 seconds better than what Robinson did. 12 points, 2 triples, and a block. He continues to be frustrating. He'd been playing much better lately. The blocks have been there, more offensive stuff. The percentages have been rough, but he continues to be a really frustrating guy. While Jay Crowder also is frustrating. He puts up lines and you go, well, yeah, I can use that in a 12-teamer. And then he does nonsense where he just can't hit a shot. Now, at least he did have a double-double. I like him really as a 14-team league guy, but you could use him in certain 12-team scenarios. On to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Andrew, we go Wiggins, 18, 6 and 7, 1 steal, 2 blocks. It's great to see those numbers before the personal issues took hold returning and that illness that he suffered. So it's great to see the assists, the rebounds, the defensive numbers, 5 of 5 from the line as well. That had been slipping recently. Hopefully he has got it figured out, and it does look a bit that way. There is still some skepticism, but that's nice. While Jeff Teague off the bench.
My name is Jeff.
13.6 assists. If you have him in a league, I would still be holding because he is continuing to at least play decent enough minutes. While Jarrett Culver, this free throw percentage is disgusting. 25% from the line. Now, he wasn't a good shooter at Texas Tech, but he was better than this. 14 and 7 for Culver as the starting point guard, but he's not getting starters minutes. He's in that 25 to 26 range. He's a 14-team league player, more than a 12er. Shabazz Napier's doubtful hamstring, he returned to action, but with Culver and Teague playing point guard, it is hard to see Napier getting any sort of minutes to be a relatively solid contributor in most leagues. Keita Bates-Diop continues to impress, 10 and 5 in 25 minutes with Jake Layman out. How his role looks when Layman comes back is still to be determined. I could see him getting minutes over Trevion Graham or even over Layman. He has really impressed. While Covington played 31 minutes, that's great. 3 triples, a steal and a block, 13 points, but the issue there is the consistency of the minutes, and that's a problem with him. Look, I still think he'll figure it out, but it is really worrisome. Townsy, 21 and 12 in 36 minutes, one of his not good games, but still pretty solid overall. Next game for us to take a look at. 4th game of the day, the Dallas Mavericks. They roll the Lakers on the road. This is huge for Dallas. Their offense continues to be great. And the fact that they can knock off the Lakers, who hadn't lost in forever, on the road is magnificent. 114-100 for the Mavericks. Luka Doncic, 27, 9 and 10 with 3 steals. Continues to be unbelievable. But how about my mate Delon Wright? 28 minutes, 17, 5 and 9 with 4 steals and 3 triples. Now, before we rush to add Delon, there's a couple of things to note here. Yes, he can do this. We talked about it in the preseason. If he plays 30 minutes a night, he's going to be a 12-team league guy because he's good. He just hasn't fit with this team so far. This is super encouraging. If you've got a weird spot on your roster where you can add him, see how it goes. If you look at his game log, though, it's really discouraging. 20 minutes a night, 21 minutes a night, 21 minutes a night, that sort of stuff. This is great. The steals are there. The assists are there. Both of those are a little bit outliery. The minutes are a bit outliery. The potential is there. He's a better player than Seth Curry, I think, a better player than Jalen Brunson at this point, a better player than his minutes would indicate, but I'm not getting overly excited. It also took Dorian Finney-Smith to play just 21 minutes for him to get there. Curry played only 16 in the burner. Jalen Brunson only played 11. Timmy Hardaway got his minutes, 31 minutes in fact, 8 points and 0 threes. His shooting was unbelievable. It was like 56% prior to this game. It was always going to drop off. It hit pretty hard here. He can be a points and threes streamer, like a Terrence Ross sort of a guy for 12-teamers, but by no means is he an absolute lock, must hold, must have in every situation type of a guy. The other guy who also performed similarly to preseason numbers was Dwight Powell. He played 32 minutes, 15 and 9 for Powell, while Porzingis only got the 28 minutes. He was battling knee soreness heading into this game. Again, I'm not rushing to add Powell after this one outlier performance. For the Lakers,
LeBron James.
25, 9 and 8 for LeBron, 4 steals, hit all of his free throws, fantastic, while Davis had 27 and 10 with 2 blocks. Not a huge amount else to talk about with Los Angeles. 10 boards to JaVale, but only 16 minutes. That doesn't really make him all that enticing. Dwight Howard only played 12 minutes, while the future MVP, Kyle Kuzma, was bad. 4 points on 8 shots, 21 minutes. That roster percentage continues to go down, but it is still too high. 79% of leagues is batshit crazy. He should not be rostered in any 10s, 12s, realistically 14-team leagues at the moment, although his scoring can be useful there. But man, he has not been good. Rondo only played 18 minutes. It seems recently that they are trying to limit the minutes he plays with LeBron. The 7 assists are still nice for Rondo. I would not have him as a must-roster 12-team league guy. He can help you with those assists, and that can be useful, but the other issues that he has and the fit there, I think it's going to keep his minutes relatively low. KCP only played 24 minutes as we await Avery Bradley's return, and then just a whole bunch of nonsense with the rest of this roster that doesn't really bear mentioning all that much. Let's move on now. Next game up on this Sunday, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the New Orleans Pelicans. We got the Thunder with a win on the road, 107-104. Steve Adams, he's looking better. Now, the minutes are still low, 28 minutes, but a double-double, and he was 5 of 6 from the line, hit free throws late to help seal this game, blocked 2 shots. That high field goal percentage, which had really been missing to begin this season. This is encouraging. The minutes are still confusing, but this is encouraging to see that, while the Italian cock, Danilo Gallinari,
Hands off my cock!
23 and 11 with 4 triples. Good stuff there. Chris Paul also 16, 4 and 8. Those guys, of course, they are sell-high guys, but the reason they're not sell-high guys is because everyone knows that and they're not willing to pay up. So I think you just got to ride it out for them in most cases. Schroeder had 17 points in 25 minutes, while Gilgeous-Alexander, it's a rough shooting night, but the 17 and 9 is still pretty strong. A steal is good. The only problem is the 29% shooting. He still is a little bit of a buy low. While Noel continues to produce the defensive numbers, a steal on the block. And with Adams only playing those 28 minutes a night every night, there is still room for Noel to be a 12-team league guy. For the Pelicans, they were once again without Derek Favors. Kenrick Williams was out of this one as well. Jolly Okafor started. He played 9 minutes and he was trash. So we had 26 minutes of Jackson Hayes, 9 and 7 with a steal and 2 blocks. Once Favors returns from the death of his mother, he will be back in that starting lineup. I'm relatively confident. Lonzo Ball was back starting, 14, 4 and 7, 4 triples and a block for Lonzo. If he is on any waiver wire, he is a must-roster player to me. Well, Josh, the Hitman Hart, had 11 points, 11 boards, 3 triples, 2 steals and 2 blocks. He got the extra minutes and started because... got the extra minutes because Kenny Williams was out. So as long as Williams remains sidelined, Hart is going to have some short-term value. So he could be an add in 12s. While Brandon Ingram, the shooting isn't quite where it has been for most of the season. He hit his threes at a strong rate, but the free throws is what's really impressive. Another 2 of 2 night here, 27 and 4 with 2 blocks for Ingram. While Drew Holiday, he is posting absolute monster numbers, and he is putting up numbers, which again, that real buy low window for him at the start of the season, hopefully you were able to capitalize, because now look, it probably is going to drop off at some point when Zion returns, but over the last 2 weeks, he's the 7th ranked player in fantasy, averaging 23, 4 and 7, blocking shots, getting steals, shooting well. Players who are good continue to be good, unless their name's Mike Conley. We'll talk about Conley a little bit later, actually, but that is strong from Drew, quite obviously. JJ Redick knocked in 3 triples in 29 minutes. Hart's return, and then Lonzo starting. I think it's eventually going to have an impact on Redick, where he is no longer a 12-team must-roster guy, which he was for a little stretch when all those injuries were hitting the team. Next game up, the San Antonio Spurs. They smacked the Detroit Pistons. Let's rephrase that. The Detroit Pistons, they smacked the San Antonio Spurs. That's better. 132-98. No LaMarcus Aldridge for the Spurs. So Yucca Poeltl, after a 1-game benching, moved back to the starting lineup. 8 and 5 with 3 steals and a block in his 26 minutes. His upside is really low, but I think his ceiling is relatively safe if you're looking for that big man like a Cody Zeller, an Ivica Zubats type of a guy. There's enough value in what Poeltl can do there. DeRozan had 20 points in 25 minutes, but this game was such an ass-kicking, it is hard to really judge much here. This is a game that Drew Eubanks played 22 minutes if you wanted to know how this one ended up. DeJounte Murray, 22 minutes, 5 points, 6 assists and 3 steals. It's rough. 1 of 6 shooting. The hot start for his shooting has fallen so far off a cliff, it's not even funny. He was a negative 15 in this game. Maximum Derek White was a negative 17. They just got crushed at all times. The potential of both blokes, Murray and White, is huge. The reality of them is negligible. I think they probably still are 12-team holds, but man, it is pretty rough. Bryn Forbes, 23 minutes. He's losing out at the moment because he's not that good. I think that's pretty simple. While Rudy Gay started in place of Aldridge, 23 minutes, 12 points, 2 blocks. That's a strong night from Gay, but I don't think it's anything that we need to get overly excited for. I'll tell you who's going to get excited. Everybody who loves the Woodsman, Christian Wood, because he played 22 minutes and had 28 and 10, 2 threes, a steal and a block. This is why we love Wood. We know on a per-minute basis he can be massive. Just this situation where he gets this much playing time, where it's this much of a blowout, where he can just go out and have a 34% usage is so rare that don't overreact to this game. This was a game, when you look at that, that stands out and you go, man, I've got to get me some wood.
Giggity.
But you also have to look further down the box score and see that Blake Griffin played only 22 minutes. Andre Drummond played only 26 minutes. So there are numerous things there where you go, well, that's not going to happen every night. So where is Wood going to get this opportunity where he can just go out and have fun for 20 minutes, which is basically what happened. We love what he can do, but I don't think Casey fully trusts him, and this sort of opportunity is just not going to arise all that often. Derrick Rose only played 19 minutes. He didn't need to play more. 10 points, 10 assists. Great to see the assists from Rose. The scoring not quite there in this one, but he provides that back-end 12 value, even though his upside is limited, while the Duck Luke Kennard also took advantage, 20 points on 12 shots. Again, really hard to read too much into this one from a Pistons perspective. Could be a buy low on Blake Griffin, 22 minutes, 10, 2, and 6. The most encouraging thing to me here with Griffo is the 6 assists. They've been really missing from him over the last, since he started this season, so that's encouraging. While the Shark, Bruce Brown, had 13, 7, and 3.
Baby shark,
Solid enough there. Again, he still continues to be unrosted in only 96% of leagues, which does not seem normal. The next game up, the Golden State Warriors, they took on the Orlando Magic. The Magic get the win in the end, 100-96. Draymond Green, 11, 4, and 7 with 2 steals in 23 minutes. Now, he is going to sit out the back-to-back on Monday for rest.
I'm not tired.
And he's on this 27-minute limit for the rest of the season, which is obviously frustrating. But 11, 4, and 7 with 2 steals is, of course, a 12-team league guy. So he's not a drop. You're not going to be able to trade him because no one's going to give you anything back. You just have to sort of ride out the nonsense that is this Warriors team at this point, unfortunately. But that's still an okay line. Cauley Stein had a double-double. His love is going to run out pretty soon because Kevon Looney is scheduled to return on Monday. Cauley Stein is only a deeper league guy. While the little dog, Glenn Robinson III, another strong night. 19 points, 3 triples. He's an interesting scoring and 3-point stream type guy. As is Burksy. Alec Burks had 15, 5, and 3 with 3 steals. Value at least until D'Angelo Russell returns. Marquise Chris, man, he's been playing so well. He had 3 points here with 2 blocks. While Looney's returning, it's going to have an overall cramp on his value. But next game, Monday, with Draymond out, there is still some stream value in him and the Wizard, Amari Spellman, who had 7 and 7. Both guys struggled. While the Triangle, Eric Pascal, 17 and 6, 35 minutes. Minutes are up. Usage is okay. Again, he still struggles in so many categories that it does limit his overall value. Probably should still be a 12-team league guy, while the lubricant Kai Bowman, 12, 3, and 4, he's going to jump up significantly for Monday, probably pushing high 30s in minutes, an excellent stream option for Monday. For the Magic, Johnny Isaac, 14 and 11 with 5 blocks. Fantastic. Evan Fournier, his hot streak runs on, 32 points, 6 triples. He is a real sell high. When Nikola Vucevic returns, Fournier is not going to have this level of opportunity, but he has been great. While Terry Ross had 19 points, including 3 triples and a steal and a block, a real fringe 12-teamer. Markelle Fultz available in 58% of leagues for whatever reason that people love having their fingers up their assholes because they are not taking the action. 14, 4, and 9 for Fultz. He should be rostered in all leagues. While Kemi Birch, 30 minutes for Kemi, 7 and 10, 2 steals and a block. That is great. That is solid enough for 14-team leagues. While Mohamed Bamba, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 17 minutes in 2 straight games for Bamba. 4 and 3 with a block. They still don't trust him. Still the minutes limit. He's an interesting blocks streamer. Maybe he's a 12-team league guy. It really depends on your team, but that is not an encouraging performance. And I had an inordinate amount of people ask me once the news came out about the Chief Al-Farouq Aminu.
Sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit.
The amount of people asking me what to do. Al-Farouq Aminu's torn his meniscus. Are there any ads? This is a bloke who was not even in the rotation until injuries hit. Wes Iwundu and Michael Carter-Williams are just going to step into his minutes. So unless everyone who's messaging me are in 18-team leagues, this is not Al-Farouq Aminu from Portland. This just isn't. I just don't see what everyone's getting so excited about. Now, in saying that, Aaron Gordon's been shitful. 8, 7, and 4 on 2 of 11 shooting. Will Aminu's absence help him? Probably not, but still, that does tie in. If Gordon was dropped, I'd add him. But it's got nothing to do with Aminu being out, the way that I look at it anyway. DJ Augustin went scoreless, missed all 5 of his shots in this one. Next game we look at was the Utah Jazz and the Toronto Raptors, an ass-kicking of the highest order. The Raptors 130-110. It was about 40-point margin in the second quarter, which was crazy, but everybody It's amazing because Mike Conley, 20 points on 54% shooting.
I see this as an absolute win.
Now, I'm not getting overly excited, but I do know that he's not a 36% shooter. So this is going to improve. This is great to see that he hasn't completely suffered a case of the Markelle Fultzes. So it is encouraging to see that 20 points in 25 minutes. But realistically, this game was that much of an ass-kicking that it's so hard to draw anything out of it. Bogdanovic, just 11 points in 30 minutes. Don Mitchell, 16 points in 31 minutes. Joe Ingles continues to struggle, and it's not a 12-team league guy. Moutier was poor. Look, everybody was poor in this one. Gobert, 12 and 11. Just not a good night for the Jazz. On to the Raptors. Siakam, excellent. 35, 5 and 5 with 5 threes. Freddie VanVleet, 21, 5 and 11 with 5 threes. Kyle Lowry is going to return pretty soon, and it's going to have an impact on these guys, but they're still going to roll along pretty strongly. Well, Storm and Norman Powell, 15, 5 and 3 with 4 steals. If you can get any top 100 guy back for Powell in a trade, you have to do it, because he's just not going to be able to play 33 a night. Marc Gasol, 11 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists and 2 blocks. Anytime you get over 7 points for Marc Gasol, it feels like a real win. But only the 25 minutes there. He's a soft hold in 12-teamers. Serge Ibaka did return and play 21 minutes here and have 13, 4 and 3. And I can see a situation where both Ibaka and Gasol aren't 12-team league must-roster players. The Jedi, OG Anunoby.
Hello there.
4 steals and a block is excellent. 10 points in 30 minutes isn't all that good, but he is still remaining a 12-team league guy, while Terrence Davis had 13, 4 and 3, and he is going to lose a ton of value once Lowry returns, unfortunately. The Waterboy Chris Boucher, just mop-up duty here, 5 minutes in this one. He lost his rotation spot with Ibaka back, while Hollis Jefferson remained 10 and 6, a steal and 2 blocks for Rondé. He is a 16-team, maybe a 14-team league guy at this point. All right, on to the last game of the day. A really weird schedule today with that. Such a huge gap between the ending of the second last game and the beginning of the last game. But we're here with the Wizards and the Clippers. Just an absolute point fest. The Clippers win 150 to 125. That is a huge performance, a huge score from the Clippers, obviously. With Flaming Mo Wagner out for the Wizards, they had no center, so we saw a lot of minutes from Rui Hachimura, 38 of them, in fact, 30 points, 9 rebounds, 2 triples. That is Hachimura's best performance in the NBA. He took 23 shots to lead the team, which is something to pay attention to. He hit 2 threes. I do not think that this is an indication that he now becomes a must-roster 12-team league guy. How often is he going to play 38 minutes? Very unlikely. Wagner's not out for a long term with this ankle injury. How often is he going to be the backup center? How many times is he going to take more shots than Beal? And still, nothing really defensively. The 3 assists are nice. He did look pretty strong. The long twos were going in nicely. The mid-range stuff was working well, but he still has all those limitations as before. He was just force-fed into a larger role in a big-minute role, and I think that I'd be watching, because he's going to get scooped up in lots of leagues after this. Look to see who the player is that gets dropped. You might get some value there. I am not overreacting to this. I am with Davis Bertans, because he's continually doing this. 20 points, 6 triples, 2 steals, a block. He's a must-roster 12-team league guy, while Beal had 23, 5, and 11 on some pretty poor shooting, but otherwise not too bad. I chastised Isaiah Thomas at halftime. He had a pretty strong third quarter to end with 16 points, 4 assists with 3 triples, but he just consistently has not been good enough to be considered a must-roster guy. He isn't the same player. We know he's not going to be the same player. It's hard to see him as a must-roster guy. Obviously, Troy Brown isn't. He was benched at halftime for Isaac Bonga, who started over him. Brown, even if he is starting both halves, isn't a 12 or a 14 or probably even a 16-team league guy at this point, unfortunately. Now, Brown, he did finish with 8 and 7, which is better than a lot of his recent performances, but it's nothing to get overly excited about. While Ish Smith and Geordie McRae, who've been playing well, they shit the bed a little bit here. Speaking of shitting the bed, Tom Bryant, 31 minutes, 9 and 8. Now, the shots just would not go in for Bryant, 3 of 11. Now, defensively, he's not good. And he was pretty poor in this one. Montrezl Harrell was dominating him. But that shooting numbers, of the 3 of 11 from the field, the 3 of 6 from the line, we know he's better than that. So that could have ended up, he could have ended up with a 15 or 16 and 8 line, which salvages a pretty bad night overall. So I'm buying low on Tom Bryant if that's an option. For the Clippers, Kawhi and Paul George, they both dropped over 30 points in under 30 minutes. Kawhi had 34 in 26 minutes, just elite efficiency, which is great considering he'd been struggling from that area. Montrezl Harrell set a career high with 15 boards. He had 23 points, and Lou Williams had 22 points. Both of those blokes putting up big numbers off the bench. Not much else to really talk about. If you're in a deeper league, Jerome Robinson looks to be in the rotation replacing Scooter Magruder, who's out without hamstring injury. Robinson had 8-3-3 with a 1-1. Solid enough for, say, a 20-team league, and he's allegedly rostered in 0% of Yahoo leagues, so he's going to be available. Mo Harkless did nothing. Ivica Zubac did nothing. Jermichael Green bruised his arse bone, so he was out for the remainder of the game while Paddy Patterson stepped in there. But there's very little to see with those guys, while Beverly had 6 boards and 3 steals. And if you own Beverly, if you roster Beverly, you have him because he's a good rebounding point guard. You have him because he gets steals. And he did exactly that here. You don't roster him to get the points. That's just not what Patrick Beverly does. And of course, it's not what he did here in this one. Let's have a look at the injury news now across the NBA. Ja Morant dealing with back issue, which I talked about earlier. He is week to week. I think we're looking at a minimum 2 weeks absence for Morant, and then there'll be some concern with him as we move forward. That's obviously a terrible sign for his fantasy value for the short term. Tyus Jones to pick up D'Anthony Melton in deeper leagues. Kevon Looney ready to return for the Warriors on Monday. I do like him as a 12-team guy. Pretty limited upside, but if you do have an Ivica Zubac, if you do have a Cody Zeller, I think someone like Looney, if you've got a Jakob Poeltl, I do think Kevon Looney is a better option than those guys. While Kevin Huerter also ready to return. He's going to be coming back at some point this week. I do think he is a 12-team league guy to look at too. Marcus Morris missed today's game with a back issue. I don't know what this means for him moving forward. I do continually think that he is a sell high. Maybe if he strings together another couple of big games, you might be able to get something back. Brandon Clark had a hip problem that cost him the majority of today's games. He's still a 12-team hold, but it is something to watch as we move forward with Jonas Valanciunas getting those minutes over him prior to today's game anyway. And then we had Frankie Ntilikina leave with a back issue. He looks like he's going to miss Monday. Marcus Smart has an abdominal issue. He also looks like he will miss time. That's what he said. He's banged up with multiple things, finger problems as well. So the Celtics don't play again until Wednesday. They've got a 2-game week. It will be foolish for you to start Marcus Smart in a weekly league, considering he plays maybe 1 game and maybe none at all. The swimmer Jordan Poole, he had a leg issue that didn't enable him to return to the game, but he's not a fantasy rosterable guy in most formats, while the Chief Al Farouk Aminu has a torn meniscus.
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
Weza Wundu's going to take his minutes. That's good for 20-team leagues, maybe. I don't think it does much for Gordo. I don't think it does much for Isaac, as I mentioned earlier. We don't know the time frame on Aminu's return yet at this point either. Let's flip it over now and look at some DFS action. We're looking at Monday's games. We're looking at DraftKings pricing. All right, the first game of the day is the Phoenix Suns traveling to take on the Charlotte Hornets, the Frank Kaminsky Bowl. The Hornets are favored by 4 points, and the total is 225.5 points. The Suns have quite a few injury issues, or at least injury designations. Aaron Baines is probable, as is Ty Jerome, while McCall Bridges and Cameron Johnson are both questionable. Now, if Bridges and Johnson are both not ready to go, Tyler Johnson gets a boost. Kelly Oubre will have to play a ton of minutes, and then someone like Jerome might actually be pushed into service. We might get some more minutes from Ali Okobo in that situation as well. It probably also helps Dario Saric, as we won't get any Bridges or Johnson playing at the power forward position. So some really interesting trickle-down effects if that is the case. Cheick Diallo is out of this game with an illness, so Kaminsky is going to be taking those backup minutes from Baines without any doubt here. At the point guard spot, DraftKings pricing, we're looking at Devontae Graham, 7,200. He seems like a mid-30s to low 40s lock almost every night, so he's a great option. While Terry Rozier at 6,700, I also think he is a relatively strong cash option in this matchup. Ravishing Rick Rubio's at 6,700. Great game from him last time out. He had 37 points in that one, so that does give him an element of value here. I still think there are probably other better guys on the board, but he's not a complete write-off. Or Devin Booker at 8,200. Hasn't quite been where we've needed him the last couple of games. If we do get absences from both Bridges and Johnson, I can see Booker crashing through that 40-point mark, which would give him a pretty significant chunk of value, while Okobo's at 3,500. That's an interesting GPP guy. Nicky Batum's at 37 as a shooting guard. I'm not interested there. Malik Monk, neither. McCall Bridges or Tyler Johnson. Johnson at 3,500. Maybe we'd look at him if those two guys that I mentioned earlier, Johnson and Bridges, do happen to be sidelined. At small forward, Cammy Johnson's at 3,600. A little bit tough to use him when he's questionable, although we will get that designation sorted out before the game starts. So maybe in a tournament we look there, especially if, say, Bridges is eliminated, if he's ruled out, and then and Johnson gets to get those minutes. Similarly, if Johnson's out, then McCall Bridges could have some value there also. Miles Bridges at 5,500. I'm not sure there's much upside there, but he's been getting relatively safe floor value, which is not a terrible one to have a look at. While Šarić gets a big boost in the absences of those other guys. He's at 5,900. Marvin Williams, not so much. And we love Oubre at 7,000 if he has to play close to 40 minutes like he did last game where he had 48 points. For the big man, Aaron Baines, he's still going to be on somewhat of a restriction, but he's at 5,400. He had 28 points last game. No reason not to use him in a really strong positive matchup. While Zala and Biyombo, hard to get a full read on those guys. I think the upside for them is pretty limited. While Paul Washington Jr. is at 51. He's been bad. He's been good. He had 18 points last game. That salary is not bad, but I think we'd only want to use Washington in a tournament situation. Next game up, the Utah Jazz. They're trying to make up for that horrible loss against the Raptors. They take on the Philadelphia 76ers in Philadelphia on a back-to-back. The Sixers are 5.5-point favourites, and the total here is 208. Joshie Richardson is doubtful, while Shake Milton and Kyle O'Quinn, the cock monster, they are both questionable. For the Sixers, I don't think there's any worry about rest with the Jazz. They rested plenty on Sunday. At point guard, Benny Simmons is at 8,300. He's getting a ton of steals at the moment. He's averaging over 40 points, only barely, over the last 5 games. That salary is okay. I'm not massively into it, but it's solid enough. While Mike Conley's at 6,000. Shot the ball well against Toronto. The minutes weren't there to really push the value up, but he is at least a GPP guy at 6,000, while the Donovan Mitchell at 78. A poor showing Sunday. He should bounce back and at least be able to get to that 40-point mark. Manny Mudiay, Hal Neto, Dante Exum, I don't think we need to look at them too closely. With Richardson unlikely to play, Furkan Korkmaz will get the start. He has been underwhelming, averaging 17 points only in his last 5 games. He can get hot, but it is strictly just a tournament spot for him, while the painter Matisse Thybulle similarly. Jingle and Joe not doing it for me this season. At small forward, Tobias Harris is at 66. Cash, fine. Tournaments, I'm not really all that thrilled with him, while Jimmy Ennis is at 38. He's been playing pretty well of late, but again, hard to really get too much trust into Ennis. While Bojan Bogdanovic, a little bit of a disappointing performance. He's at 6,900.
Giggity.
He'd been exceeding that number pretty consistently. I like him. I don't love him here, though. Royce O'Neal, not interested. For the big man, Al Horford's at 6,400. A strong cash floor, 30-point guy almost every night. I think you'll be able to put up those numbers when he goes up against Royce O'Neal. Gobert can be a problem, obviously. So Embiid at 10-3 is okay, but Embiid has played well against Gobert, averaging 54 points the last 3 contests against the Jazz. The matchup here is okay for Joel. I do like him. I don't like that the salary's jumped up by $800. That's somewhat of a concern. While Gobert is down at 7,400. That absolutely puts him into play. Hopefully he can bounce back after a poor day on Sunday. Next game, we're looking at the Golden State Warriors. They are on a back-to-back taking on the Atlanta Hawks. Draymond Green is out for the Warriors, while Kevon Looney looks to return to action. For the Hawks, Cam Reddish is questionable. DeAndre Bembry is probable. At point guard, the lubricant Kai Bowman's at 5,100. With Green out, he should play high 30s in minutes and be able to get past that number pretty easily, while Alec Burks at 6,000. He's been consistent from Burks' perspective anyway, giving you 34 a night and should be able to absorb a fair bit of ball handling with Draymond's sideline. So I like both of those guys here. Reddish at 3,500, I couldn't like it less. While Trae Young at 10.5, he is giving us 50s consistently. That is a big price jump, though, $1,600 price jump, which does sour me a little bit on him. Bembry, Evan Turner, no thanks. Glennie Robinson, the third little dog, 5,100 for Robinson. Only for tournaments, he is wildly inconsistent with his DFS output, while Jordan Poole and Alan Crabb, they might as well Spider-Man meme each other. At small forward, Jabari Parker's at 6,900.
Giggity.
Really poor last game against Houston, as pretty much the whole team was, but prior to that, he'd been like a 35-point lock nearly every night, so I think he's worth looking at against a bad defense. While the triangle, Eric Pascal's at 56, pretty strong cash play with Draymond out, like him here. DeAndre Hunter's at 5,000, he is hard to trust, just a tournament sort of a guy, while Vince Carter is not one that I'm all that keen on. At centre, Damian Jones against his former team. There's just the 3 centres with Bruno and Alex Len there is a little bit tough to rely there. Looney I wouldn't want to use in his first game back, although 3,400 is an interesting price. The big beneficiaries, I think, are going to be guys like Marquise Chris and Amari Spellman, who should be able to absorb some power forward minutes with Draymond out. Looney in that mix does complicate things somewhat, but I think if we're looking at a GPP option, maybe we're looking at Chris over a Cauley Stein or an Amari Spellman. Next game for us to look at, the Indiana Pacers and the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies on that back-to-back. They've got a few players that we don't really know the status of them yet. Jonas Valanciunas, who missed Sunday's game. Brandon Clark, who left Sunday's game early. We know that Ja Morant is out. Kyle Anderson is questionable here as well. So a lot of different ways that this can go. Of course, Bruno Caboclo becomes an option if Clark and Valanciunas are out. Jaren Jackson's always a tournament guy. The fouls are a concern there with him. With Anderson out, it does help guys like Grayson Allen and Jay Crowder and even DeAnthony Melton, who was really good on Sunday. At point guard, Malcolm Brogdon's at 8,100. I think you have to really like him to get to 40 points against this Grizzlies team, so he looks pretty strong. While Tyus Jones at 5,600 and Melton at 34. Both of those guys are pretty interesting. Melton actually dropped 36 on Sunday, which is fantastic at that salary. And if we get the absence of Kyle Anderson again, I think there is some value there in Melton, more of a tournament guy, whereas Jones I like as a relatively solid cash option who had 31 points on Sunday. Aaron Holiday, TJ McConnell, Grayson Allen, hard to get overly excited about those guys. At shooting guard, Dylan Brooks is at 5,200. He is inconsistent, but usage will be up with Morant out, and especially if Valanciunas is sidelined. So 5,200 looks like a pretty good price for him, while Jeremy Lamb at 63. Limited upside, but Lamb is consistently giving us around that 30 to 32 mark, which is a pretty strong number at 6,300. Justin Holiday, I don't really see it for DFS. Your small forward, you've got Jay Crowder at 54, who has been putting up okay numbers. He's not the greatest seasonal league guy, but the DFS numbers at that price are okay as a cash guy. Tony Warren Jr. is at 62, again, limited upside because of his inability to contribute really outside of points and some threes, but that does give him 30-plus points most nights, so I'm okay with him here. Doug McDermott and Solomon Hill, Kyle Anderson, no thank you. Have to love Domantas Sabonis at 8,000. He has been putting up big numbers. Good matchup for him as well. While Valanciunas, who was excellent before the illness sidelined him, he is worth a look at 7,500, averaging 50 points over his last 3 games. Jaren Jackson, as I mentioned, a GPP guy, while Miles Turner has been piss poor, averaging just 22 points in the last 3, maybe for tournaments, but even then, I'm not excited. Brandon Clark's hard to utilize, and I mentioned Bruno Caboclo would be the option if we get a couple of those absences in the front court. Next game we're looking at is the Knicks and the Bucks. The Knicks on a back-to-back. We don't know if Frank Ntilikina is going to play. He is doubtful to play, so we expect him not to. Marcus Morris missed on Sunday. If he is out, that's more minutes for Damian Dotson and Kevin Knox. And Alfred Payton, we still don't know whether he is going to play. So this could be a ton of minutes happening for Dennis Smith Jr., while Brook Lopez is listed as doubtful for the Bucks, meaning we're probably going to get another Robin Lopez start in that situation. At point guard, Dennis Smith's at 32. That looks like an unbelievably good option, especially if we have both Ntilikina and Payton sidelined. He dropped 33 on Sunday, Smith, so great value at almost minimum price. While Bledsoe at 6,500, you love the matchup going up against New York. He hasn't quite been to that level, but I like him here. Well, DiVincenzo's at 4,400. Not super keen there with Middleton back. Rowan Barrett Jr. is at 6,300. Not really putting up the big numbers, maybe for tournaments, but I'm not super into it. George Hill's hard to rely upon, and Alfred Payton, I don't know if he's playing, and even if he is, I wouldn't want to get into it. At shooting guard, Chris Middleton's at 57. Even in the limited minutes, he's putting up numbers commensurate with that price, so I think we have to at least look at him as a tournament guy. Wes Matthews, Connaughton, no thanks. Damo Dotson at 3,400. Maybe if we get Ntilikina and Morris out again, we could have a look at him, but I just don't see much value there. At small forward, Yanni's at 12,000. The risk, I guess, we have with Antetokounmpo is a blowout, and him playing 28 minutes. He still could be able to get 55 points in that time, so he is pretty strong, but there is that risk there. While Morris at 5,500, I wouldn't want to invest in him with the back issues that kept him out of Sunday's game. Kevin Knox, of course, really, really hard to get excited about him. At centre, Mitchell Robinson, 4,900, just impossible to predict what he's going to do, so I think we leave that out. While Robin Lopez at 44, strong game from him. He had 33 points the last time with when Brook was out, and it is a relatively solid matchup for him here. I think we can look at him more as a cash guy than a tournament upside. Bob Portis, Taj Gibson, no thank you. DJ Wilson, Ersan Ilyasova, also no thank you. While Julius Randle's at 7.3. Now, he's been giving us low 30s to mid 30s most nights. That's pretty good value at that spot for Randle. So I don't dislike him here. I just think you probably find a better guy in other spots. Last game of the day, the Chicago Bulls and the Sacramento Kings. The Kings are 5-point favorites. The total is 210. Tomas Satoransky is probable. He played last time through that probable designation, while Trev Ariza is not on the injury report. He's missed these few games with a groin injury. Hopefully they don't play him. While Bogdan Bogdanovic is probable with the hamstring. And I think that's probably going to keep him under the 30 minutes as we've seen over the last few. At point guard, Chris Dunn. Chandler Hutchison, doubtful as well. Chris Dunn's at 4,600. He started the last game, played 29 minutes with Hutch out. He's more of a tournament guy than anything. Corey Joseph is not a DFS option to me, while Kobe White at 49, again, just an upside guy in case he gets hot. I do like Levine at 7,900. He's averaging 44 over his last 5. Pretty strong number for him there, while Satoransky at 53 has also been exceeding his value relatively regularly of late, so I think that he is an okay cash play. For your shooting guards, Bogdanovic is at 62. The hamstring's worrying me, so I'm not really going to go in there, while Bud Hield's at 71 has been exceeding that number relatively comfortably over the last week or so. I think he is worth looking at in both formats of your DFS. For your small forwards, there's not a lot to see. Thad Young, Trevor Ariza, they're not all that interesting, but Harrison Barnes, the pencil, Barnesy. He's at 6,000, and he's been getting that number relatively comfortably. With Bogdanovic slightly limited, I think that he is worth a look at in cash games, and even with a little bit of tournament upside as well. And then you go to the big men. Richaun Holmes is at 6,500. Centers have had a great time against the Bulls, so Holmes should be no exception. Like him here. Bielitsa at 6,100 has been pretty solid as well. Good matchup for him also. Wendell Carter Jr. is at 6,900.
Giggity.
I think that's probably too high for Carter. I do like him. That's just on the high level. Larry Markkinen, impossible to have any trust in him. He's only down at 58. I would have hoped he would have come all the way down to, say, 5,000, but he's not there yet. While The Undertaker, Dwayne Dedman, hard to get anything or any sort of excitement level going with him at all. Let's now look at FanDuel and some value guys over there. We love Smith and Tyus Jones, Holmes, Bielitsa, Rob Lopez. All those guys have got pretty significant matchups and really good prices. Yanni comes in pretty strong as well with that risk involved. Korkmaz at minimum salary. The lubricant Kai Bowman at 58. That's a pretty high price, but this is the time that he can exceed that. Jabari looks okay. Glenn Robinson, Alec Burks, Sabonis, Trae Young, Malcolm Brogdon, Devontae Graham, all coming in as pretty strong GPP and cash guys over on FanDuel. That'll wrap it up for today's show. Don't forget, subscribe to this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on YouTube. Give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, follow me on Twitter, do all of those good things, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Paul Washington Jr.